All right, you running the credits, Ryan? And I'll, do like a ladies and gentlemen, the very British Chris Jones. I'm ready when you are, sir. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Film Snobbery Live. I am your host, the film snob, Mr. Nic Baisley, and I am joined tonight by my co-host, Mr. Jerry Cavallero, director of such movies as Stuck Like Chuck and the upcoming Stuck Like Chuck 2. We've got a very special show for you guys tonight. I could not be more thrilled with our guest that we were able to pull in, not only because of his expertise in the industry, but also because of the late hour in which we're disturbing him. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a great guest, a great show. It's gonna be an evening of learning, fun, entertainment, and education. I want to kind of just quickly go over who our guest is. You may have seen his short. It's won many awards at many film festivals, and also was on the Oscar nomination shortlist. The name of the movie is Gone Fishing, and the director of that movie is actually here on the show tonight. His name is Mr. Chris Jones, and he is the author of the new book. He's got a whole series of these books out there, different editions of them, but the latest one is the Guerrilla Filmmaker's Pocketbook, written by Mr. Chris Jones, also Genevieve Joliffe and Andrew, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but I'm sure Chris will correct me. Andrew Zinnes, I believe, or Zinnes? I don't know, I'm sorry. Zinnes! So what we're going to do first is to familiarize you guys a little bit out there with what Chris Jones does. We're going to show you the trailer to his short film, Gone Fishing, and when we come back, we're going to talk with the man himself, where he will single-handedly save independent film. So let's cut to the videotape.
Tell me about the time when you caught that pipe. What was it called?
Goliath. He was the king of the lake, and no one could catch him except me. I got Dad's biggest hook. Goliath made short work of that one, so I ordered the biggest hook I could buy. It was man against beast. And so I waited, and I waited.
You have to be sure to signal in.
Till Goliath took the bait.
And we're back. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming one of the most charming British speakers and authors, directors that I've had the pleasure of meeting in the past 24 hours. His name is Mr. Chris Jones. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is. Hey, sir, thank you for calling in tonight.
You're very welcome. What an intro. I feel like leaving and going straight back to bed. I'm terrified now.
Yeah, we figured we're going to get you while you're at your weakest, and we're not going to pull any punches on you. But no, thank you so much for getting out of bed for us and coming on and sharing your knowledge with us, because I think a lot of the filmmakers out there in the audience and people who will watch this in the future are really going to get a good example of what you've done right in your career so far, and what the reason why everyone should go out and buy the Guerrilla Filmmaker's Pocketbook, which is available now. I'm pretty sure you can definitely get it online, but it will soon be available everywhere, I think we were saying.
Yeah, in all bookshops, pretty much everywhere on the planet, and obviously online. But you can also buy it direct from us at chrisjonesblog.com. We've not got the guerrillafilm.com URL up yet, but it makes a really big difference to us if you do buy direct. Just like independent film, if we can bypass the Amazon shareholders, it's like we get 12 times more if you buy direct
Wow.
from us. So yeah, it's just like film. Publishing business is in exactly the same boat.
Yeah, it's amazing how much the middleman takes out, and I think that's true in most industries, especially the independent film world. The more you can get done yourself, the more you can kind of take back on it. At least that's my belief on it. You're the expert. You may disagree, but
yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right, and we are in that extraordinary time at the moment where there's almost like a perfect storm of possibilities converging for independent film with the advent of like Canon 5D Mark II DSLRs delivering cinema quality images of cameras that cost a few $1,000s, with video services like Vimeo, and who knows what else is going to evolve in the next 15 minutes, let alone days, weeks, months, and the ability to connect with audiences through social media and other online technologies. It's all suddenly appeared, because independent film for a long time has been peddling this dream that you can make a movie in your garage and sell it, and it's always been kind of a half truth. But I think almost in the last 18 months, it's actually suddenly appeared, and it's probably the most exciting time I've ever experienced as a filmmaker, in terms of everything you thought you knew. Well, it's kind of all bets are off. People are making this up as they go along, and some people are failing, some people are having huge success. And yeah, it's very exciting.
It's funny because I see times like this, and I think I've said it before on the show and in person at other events and stuff when I've been talking to other filmmakers, but it's almost like I see this kind of resurgence in independent film in these new ways of thinking and doing things. You see it almost every 10 years or so. Back in the 80s, it was, video cassettes were the game changer, and then in the 90s, it was things like Sundance, the Sundance Kids, and then DVDs were the game changer, and now it's all about digital distribution and social marketing, along with some other tools that are available out there. I find it to be funny that a lot of filmmakers are still even clinging to the theatrical distribution model, which is it's funny because it just seems to be a very difficult model to work with. What's your opinion on the whole theatrical distribution model right now, as far as a low-budget filmmaker, their ability to not only get into a theater, whether it be four-walling or actual theatrical distribution, or what's the deal? Like, is it even worth it anymore?
Well, I think there's two very important aspects to that, and there's the kind of same two aspects that every filmmaker tackles with everything that they do. One is the business of it. How do I create it, sustain it, make it work, and put food on my table and a roof over my head? But the other one, which is probably the one that drives most people, is the creative urge, the artist within. However you want to express it, the need to communicate the story to a group of people, and that part of the filmmaker is usually verging on psychotic, and driven very powerfully by this need to present their movie in a theatrical experience. That's been my experience anyway. And I think that's one of the reasons why people have clung so tightly to the theatrical experience, irrespective of the business model that's attached to it. The notion of presenting your film in a big dark room, very loud, very bright, it evokes that feelings that we all had, the day that we were infected with this disease called filmmaking. So I think that's why we cling on to it. But on the flip side, the business model, it's completely bonkers. It makes absolutely no sense. I'm very good friends with a distributor over here in the UK, and David Wilkinson, and he's actually in the book, in the Guerrilla Filmmaker's pocketbook. And I just flat out asked him, what's the point of working with a distributor in 2010? And he kind of came to the conclusion there's almost no point, because you should and could do it yourself. Why give somebody all of your money when effectively you can do it yourself? There's tools available for you to do it. Even within the traditional model of going into a cinema, personally, I think John Rice is much more on the ball in so much as a theatrical experience is simply a place where a bunch of people congregate and watch your film. And
Yep.
ideally, you're able to charge money for that and earn a crust.
And for those of you out there who want to read that chapter on domestic distribution with David Wilkinson, it's page 230 in the Guerrilla Filmmaker's Pocketbook, and I highly recommend checking that out. I've read this book cover to cover, not only because I was in preparation to interview you and I wanted to be knowledgeable, but basically I started reading it and I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying that like, it's a narrative. It's a dense book. It is a lot of information packed into a very small bit of real estate. And I did have to, I would read probably 50 or 75 pages and then I'd have to put it down for a couple hours. But then I would go right back to it and I'd have to read the next section. And the good thing is they're so digestible because they are small. And each little mini chapter is only probably about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 to 10 pages, if that.
Yep.
So it's I can see this, and I think I said this in my review as well. I could see this being a really handy asset on the set because it's broken up into chapters regarding specific jobs and what those jobs are about. What was, was there anything when you were interviewing people for this book or you were talking to them, did you learn anything while making this book?
Oh, I learn heaps every time I speak to anybody about any aspect of filmmaking because, it always astounds me how deep the rabbit hole goes. If you just a very quick history lesson about how the Guerrilla Filmmakers Handbook series began. I started making feature films in the 90s, in the early 90s, back in the day when, nobody did that. There was no independent film. Nobody knew what it was, and we just literally picked up cameras and started doing it. And our first picture was an action thriller starring Harrison Ford's kid brother, and then we made a serial killer thriller called White Angel, which over in the States I think is called Interview with a Serial Killer. And then we had a kind of catastrophe where we ended up in prison. And it was while we were sat in the prison cells, we thought we've got to write a book about this because this is crazy.
And I was going to ask you about that little situation. How does a filmmaker end up in prison?
I guess most of the filmmakers listening are probably nodding. Yeah, when I think about it, I probably break about 15 laws every 15 minutes. For me, it was a bizarre series of coincidences that made it look like that I was some way either involved with a serial killer or an international money laundering drug dealer. Either way, I got the dawn raid with Genevieve, my business partner, and 8 police officers burst the door in, and we were hauled down to the station. I remember when it happened. I came downstairs and there was 8 blokes in the hallway, and I just didn't know what to say, and I just said, "Oh, do you want a cup of tea?" Because I thought, no, number 32's next door, you've got the wrong house. But they didn't, and they thought we were up to no good. Because, the bottom line is that we've made this serial killer thriller for, say, $20,000, and it was out in UK cinemas, and I'd been on the TV, and a tax person had been looking at our books because, there's something strange here. You're making feature films, claiming your account saved $20,000 to make it. And of course, on the show, one of the people said, "How much did it cost?" I said, hand on heart, it cost under £1 million, which is totally true. Significantly, but this guy was having his cornflakes, heard this comment, put us under surveillance, brought the fraud squad in, and it all kind of spiraled out of control as the PR marketing hyperbole kept coming out of my mouth, and they kept thinking this is crazy. And then they watched these 2 broke filmmakers jet-setting around the world, and they figured out that we were actually money laundering. And they dug our garden up trying to find the drugs that we buried. It was very surreal.
Very, very surreal and very interesting to go from serial killing to money laundering. And it's funny because I look at the state of financing and funding films and independent film today, and it really seems like there could be a lot of shady things going on, because there's really no hard and fast business model anymore unless you want to go to the standard. You go to investors, you form an LLC, you put the money in escrow, you do what you have to do until the amount of money is raised, then it gets released to you, and then that's your budget. Right now, I mean, everything from crowdfunding to even just sponsors and deferred, stuff. What's your take on the whole crowdfunding scenario? Is that something that you see a lot of people overseas using now, or is that, something that we're just kind of crazy about?
I think in the States it's more common. I have to say that American filmmakers, in my experience, seem to be between 18 months and 3 years ahead of the curve. Certainly of many of the filmmakers in the UK. That's not to say British filmmakers are dumb or not with it or don't have great ideas.
Oh, that's okay. They're all in bed right now. They're not listening to this. We could talk a whole bunch of crap about them.
Yeah, you'll have to cut me out on replay. But yeah, American filmmakers do tend to be a little bit ahead of the curve, and crowdfunding is something that I did on Gone Fishing before the phrase even existed or I'd even heard of it, and it just seemed to me a logical thing to do is to ask a lot of people that I know for a little bit of money, and that's how we raised the £25,000, which is probably about $35,000 US, and so yeah, I mean, I think it's terrific. I don't know how sustainable it is in the long term. I think it will always exist. But I think something you alluded to in your earlier comment about shady dealings, one of the things that for me has been a constant frustration, both for myself and for watching other independent filmmakers, is having to work within a broken distribution machine, and honestly, I think it's been broken since day one. I think it's never really worked. I just think there's been a myth that it does work and no other possible way forward. But that's for me so exciting.
It's always the distribution model has always been power in the hands of the few. There's always been gatekeepers. Even if you go back to the 1920s and the 1910s, when the studios were first starting forming, I mean, the first thing even Edison did back when he started, doing actual film screenings, was he made exclusive deals for distribution with theater owners and theater chains. And if you didn't, you weren't part of those chains or his studio, you couldn't get your stuff sold. And so that's where independent film kind of took root and kind of swept across our country, was filmmakers trying to find alternative distribution methods that weren't held down by what for the time were basically the earliest conglomerates.
Yeah.
So there's our history lesson for the night, guys. But no, that you're right. I mean, it has been a broken system since day one. I don't know if how much the British system is different than ours as far as opportunities, because I know that we're all in a global market now, but let's be honest, I think that we all look in our own backyards first for opportunities before we start shopping around elsewhere.
Yeah.
Do you find that distributors are more receptive to your work over there, or are they even looking overseas to us for work?
I mean, it always comes down to the movie, doesn't it? I mean, from when I train independent filmmakers, I often just try to get them to step back, climb out of your ivory tower where your idea is fantastic and brilliant, and Brad Pitt will be in it, and you'll get all the money you need, and the sun will shine all day. And also, you yourself as a filmmaker will probably make some fairly big mistakes or underfund it in some way. So your film is always going to be challenged and challenging. Think about your movie almost entirely in terms of a title, the clarity of the title, the genre, the clarity of the genre from the key artwork. How does the casting reflect that? How does the trailer or the promo reflect that? People even get to see that, because people are very, very fast at making decisions. When you poster, you make an almost immediate decision. I reckon it takes less than half a second for you to go, I'm interested or I'm not. And if you are interested, then you take a step forward and you maybe look a bit longer. And distributors, you know, they're looking for that. They're looking for that single thing that makes you go, ooh, that's interesting. I'm going to lean forward and you know, look a bit more. And I find often a lot of independent films, a lot of feature films are not distributable. Nothing to do with them being either good or bad films, but simply because the actual work itself just doesn't kind of allow itself to be marketed in the traditional sense. And again, I have to keep coming back. This is where that whole notion of, you know, sell it to 2,000 people, 5,000 people, because you will find 5,000 people who are into that strange, quirky, niche thing that you may have made in a way that previously you couldn't. So distributors, you know, I think also there is a misconception, and David alluded to this in his interview, is that he's not in business to help filmmakers be successful. His business is selling tickets at a cinema. And, you know, if people buy popcorn too, great. You know, whether the film is any good or not, whether the filmmakers have a successful career or not, is absolutely secondary to that. So, and I think filmmakers for a long time have often looked at distributors as being, you know, at the very extreme crooks, at the other extreme slightly disingenuous, when in fact, you know, whoever said it that, you know, they should be supporting the filmmakers' businesses or dreams, they just want to turn a buck on it.
And that's you know, show business. You know, and it's completely understandable. Now, another kind of quick thing I want to definitely get into you with is you have been very successful on the film festival circuit. In Europe, you know, you've been to, you know, at least a dozen film festivals with Gone Fishing, at least, if not double that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess my first question is, did you set about with a specific marketing plan for festivals to get into those, or did you just, you know, this being, you know, what it was, did you just say, let's see who, no, not to go on the fishing kind of pun, but see what bites, put the lure in and see who bites? What was your plan?
Well, I mean, first of all, I didn't make the film with an enormous festival plan in mind. And, you know, again, I think there's a lot of guilt tripping that happens with filmmakers. You know, people say, oh, you're not prepared enough, you're not thought this through enough. And, you know, people forget that often the actual producing of a film is so brutal and time-consuming and takes so long that there really isn't much time to think about other stuff. And if you have been lucky enough to do it before, by the time you get around to marketing and distribution and film festivals at the back end, it's kind of all changed again. And you kind of have to go, okay, it's all different. That festival organizer I knew at that festival, well, he's gone, and I'm now speaking to somebody else. So every movie, by definition, is a prototype, and the business model around every movie is a prototype. There's a lot of commonality. So when I came to Gone Fishing and the festival experience that went along with it, the most important thing for me was to just get as much exposure as possible. But I'd already committed to doing a huge amount, because out of the crowdfunding that I used with Gone Fishing, there were a large amount of British independent filmmakers. Now, I made a really almost ridiculous statement when I set out to make the film. Certainly in Britain it was considered ridiculous, in so much as I said, I'm going to try and win an Oscar with this film. And I lay it flat out, you know, there it is. You can't ignore it. And a lot of people reacted to that quite badly, but a lot of people reacted very, very positively. And I committed to those filmmakers to sharing my entire journey through the blog in such a way that they could live the experience vicariously and learn the lessons that I learned. And that's how this whole Gone Fishing workshop, which we may get a chance to talk about later, came about.
Yes, no, we're definitely going to talk about that. Absolutely.
I chose to do everything that I could with the film festivals, and we were lucky enough to win a few and win some awards, and I invested all of that money back into the film festival push, eventually having to hire somebody to handle all of the workload, because it was just absolutely enormous. And unlike filmmaking, where the actual process itself is kind of so enjoyable and so exciting and rewarding that often you'll find people who are just happy to help, entering 200 film festivals is a thankless task. So it's hard to get people to kind of commit to a year of unpaid work in that way. But, you know, we did the usual thing. We put it in for Cannes, for Sundance, for Berlin, for Toronto. We got rejected from all the big ones. We didn't get any British film festivals. All the big ones over here, and they're not, you know, anywhere near as big as, say, Cannes. They all declined the film. And the movie found its home in North America, which, in honesty, I always knew it would, because even though I have a British accent, and even though the film is squeaky, kind of quirky British, it does have an American sensibility, charm, and kind of narrative sweep that American audiences just really aligned with. And once we were on that journey, it was a real roller coaster of going from one to the next, to the next, to the next. It was just fantastic, and you know, it was just the thing about. I think there's a really important point here, and something that I didn't really get until I was on the festival circuit. I believe very passionately that stories and storytelling is something that has evolved in our genes. You know, it was created 50,000 years ago on the plains of the savannah, when storytelling was used by proto-humans as a tool to live experiences vicariously in such a way that, you know, if you told a story about how you escaped from the bear, the next time it happened to somebody else who was sat around the campfire with you, they knew which tree to climb up, because they'd heard the story about, you know, the last tree on the right-hand side, climb that one, because that one's the one the bear can't get up.
Right.
So we have a genetic edge, but part of that genetic edge requires that we, the storytellers, are present at the very moment that the story is experienced by the listener. And with many of the creative industries, be it, you know, music or acting in the theatre, the artist is present in the very moment of that audience receiving the story. But filmmakers, so very often, you make a film, you put it on DVD, it goes on TV, it goes in theatres, you're not present for that experience, and therefore you don't feed off that energy that you get from an audience. And for me, it was the whole gone fishing experience was transformational, because I got that powerful experience of being in a room with, you know, 100 people, 500 people, in one instance 2,000 people, when they as a group really got it, and that changed my life. I mean, that was it. I was already infected, as I said, with this disease that I call filmmaking, but that was it for the rest of my life. I'm done now. I'm beyond any kind of inoculation. I'm in, baby. And so anyway, I've kind of gone off on a bit of a philosophical rant there.
No, I enjoy it. I'm with you on the story. It also helps you have a British accent. You're very much like Michael Caine. I could listen to you talk all day. But you know, let's get about. We're gonna actually, one thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a little break. I'm gonna do a quick promo, and what I'm gonna do is when we come back from me doing this little promo, I'm gonna talk with Chris Jones here about what we're gonna do is we're gonna do kind of a little experiment. We're going to, Chris Jones is well known for doing these workshops and seminars on filmmaking, and we're going to take our own co-host, Mr. Jerry Cavallero, and of Stuck Like Chuck fame, and we're going to approach Chris on a filmmaker-to-filmmaker level and give you guys a little bit of a taste of what his workshops and seminars are kind of all about. And while we're doing that, we're going to plug the hell out of his workshops and seminars, because they are excellent. And if you like what you're hearing here already, I've already listened to a few of his seminar videos and watched them, and it only gets better, folks. So, but first, I have something very important that I want to tell you. I just wanted to use the second camera. So that's really all I've got. So folks, we're going back. Here's the deal. And by the way, why did that second camera not work? Yeah, I'm looking at you. Yeah, over there. Why did that camera not work? It's been working all day long, and you didn't get it. You didn't hit the button, did you?
It's a terrible cue from you.
No, I gave you the exact cue you said. So back to the show, folks. Now that I had to break that fourth wall because I gotta tell you, all day long. But I actually want to, there's a gentleman by the name of Alan Chu, who's from Passion River Films. He's a distributor. He's hosting a film distribution and marketing seminar of his own and panel discussion on April 29th it's right around Tribeca. And for more information on it, you can go to marketmymovie.eventbrite.com. If you use the code FS429, you get $5 off of your ticket. And you know what? Tonight, between now and the end of the show, I'm actually going to give away a free ticket as well. That being said, keep staying tuned because I could give it away anytime between now and a half hour from now. So we're going to go back now to Mr. Chris Jones here on Film Snobbery Live, our very special guest, and we're going to bring in, let's see how we can moderate this conversation. We're going to bring in co-host Jerry Cavallaro, director of Stuck Like Chuck and the upcoming film Stuck Like Chuck 2. And we're going to kind of workshop him and in his marketing and his film a little bit to see kind of where he can better succeed. And this will give you guys an idea of kind of what Chris does and kind of a little bit about, you know, why this book is important, why his seminars are important, and why this is something you need to pay attention to. So, Jerry, hi.
Hi.
All right. Do you have any quick question? Do you have any questions prepared at all for Mr. Chris Jones regarding your movie and maybe how he can help save you?
A lot of them are actually asked already.
Okay.
But,
Jerry, that's not the answer I wanted from you. I wanted, yes, I do, and here you go.
I do have one that was brought up in the chat actually earlier.
Excellent. What is it?
That's posting a film for free online.
Okay.
What's your thoughts on that? And if someone can succeed in marketing themselves or making money back from posting a film for free?
Right. Well, again, you know, going back to my earlier point, I think there are two sides to that. I mean, clearly the artist, it's fantastic news because it means your work gets seen, and if it goes well, it gets seen by thousands, perhaps even millions of people, and that is extremely rewarding, and that is currency as well for your next film. You know, that is something you can take into the room and say, listen, 3 million people saw my last film. The flip side of that is how do you monetize that, and there's a lot of talk and hyperbole and theories, case studies about people who have been successful. We did interview the guys who made Ink in the new Guerrilla Filmmakers pocketbook, and you know, we've committed to updating the interviews online on guerrillafilm.com when that whole entity is fully fledged and working. And you know, one of the questions I'm going to be asking is literally, what did you see spike or not spike when it appeared on BitTorrent? Because you know, there's so much fuzzy data out there about should you or shouldn't you do, should you not put it out onto the internet. And I think, you know, it depends on your film. I've got a good friend who's on the show that I do over here in the UK on Thursday. He's made a couple of features, but he's just also made a special interest film. It's almost like a film about a town, and it would be absolutely catastrophic to put that on the internet. That would be the wrong approach for him to do. But for other films, you know, it kind of works. I think it depends on the film. I personally have never put Gone Fishing on the internet. You know, my hope is that it doesn't appear just yet. There will be a version going on at some point, maybe in the YouTube screening room. And we think we have just done a deal with iTunes, and how soon that's going to appear in iTunes, I hope very, very soon. But I think one of the important things to understand is that if your audience is over, say, 45, they're not really into piracy, whether you view that word in a positive or a negative sense. They don't get BitTorrent, they're not interested in BitTorrent, they're not interested in watching films on a computer or moving that media from one device to another. They just want a DVD, or they want to watch it on TV. And they have the money and the desire to make it happen in those formats. Whereas younger people, $10 for a DVD or a free download, that's actually a question in their mind, and they'll probably go for the free download. So it's in the middle part of 2010. I think it's too early to call it, to say whether it's going to work for you or it's not. But on the flip side, we're in pioneering times, and people have to take big risks and see what kind of results come out of it. For me, the whole shift is going to happen when that ubiquitous box appears underneath the TV set, where my mum, you, me, my brother's kids, everybody can watch a movie and plug in any device to it, and somehow it will all speak to itself and to the other devices. And I, the creator, can put my content onto that box, and then all I become responsible for is driving traffic to that transaction. Of course, whoever owns that box is going to take a percentage, probably a large percentage, of the sales. But that, for me, is the film utopia. And ironically, Apple have already kind of done it. But because Apple is Apple, it's only ever going to be in 1 in 10,000 people's homes, because it's just too expensive and too elitist, and it's nigh and impossible to get your work into Apple Apple TV without jumping through a vast amount of hoops. Certainly, as a short film, it's very, very frustrating. Don't know whether I answered your question. Went round the houses a bit.
That was fine. That was a good answer. You covered a lot of topics. So what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to raise the budget for a meta sequel to the first film. And what I'm using is Indiegogo and doing crowdfunding. And what I've decided to do is I'm burning my own copies of the DVD and labeling them the official bootlegs. And I'm giving them to everyone who donates to the sequel. If you donate $20, you get the single disc version. Donate $30, you get the double disc with tons of bonus features. $50, you get all that with soundtracks and stuff. And I'm using that as my attempt to raise the money to shoot the entire sequel. So that's like my distribution strategy for the first film. And I don't really know if I haven't seen that done before. So I don't know, what are your thoughts on going that route with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, for all the people who say, people want immediacy and they want to watch a film on the internet, on a computer, there's also kind of magpie effect in people where they are collectors and they want to hold something shiny and nice and feel connected, physically connected to the creator. I had that experience on Gone Fishing where people were very happy to buy the film. Pay me £10, which is, I don't know, $16, something like that, for what is essentially a 13-minute film. I think it's a great strategy. The one thing I would say is that just, keep innovating. Keep looking for new opportunities and new ways of doing things, because the moment you're doing the same as anybody else, then there's nothing interesting or new about you. There's a British filmmaker over here in the UK called Danny Lacey, who has been pioneering all sorts of crazy new ideas, and I see a kind of entrepreneurial, creative entrepreneurial approach that he's taking that is just fabulous. He's got his own little TV show going over here as well, but he's just announced he's doing a 24-hour broadcast, and in order to raise £2,000, which is probably $3,000. And on the one side, part of me goes, "You're crackers, who's going to tune in for that?" And on the flip side, I'm like, well, actually, it doesn't really matter, because what will happen is you'll get covered by the traditional press. by the TV stations, by the TV news, by newspapers, and you will make that leap from what is almost like internet noise into a curated news service where normal folk kind of go, and that is very, very valuable. So I can see Danny almost getting onto the BBC News with that story because it's so completely bonkers. A good friend of mine, Sherry Candler, the marketing expert who's marketing the Guerrilla Filmmaker's Pocketbook, and I met on the festival circuit with Gone Fishing. She's always banging on about marketing, and she's absolutely right. And I think whatever you do, it all begins with marketing, and that marketing needs to be clear and succinct and simple and branded with you, the filmmaker, branded with your film, your journey. So yeah, and you've got a sequel, which to anybody who's in business, in the film business, knows that's a good thing, because if there's a sequel, there must have been one successful that came before it. So that shows continuity as well. So that's a great thing. I remember when I was making films in the early 90s, and I was working with a particular company, and they were making straight to VHS video films, and they would often make sequels without having made the original, because they sold the sequel for more than the original.
Now, let me ask you a couple of quick questions, Chris. As far as Jerry, he's got this project up on Indiegogo. He is trying to raise a fairly large amount of money. And he's struggling a little bit, I think, to find that audience. And he is offering a good amount in the way of perks and stuff like that, although the people who do donate don't actually seem to be reading those perks and seeing what they get, which is an interesting kind of experiment in itself. Also it seems that, and Jerry's not the only one. If people are having trouble translating things like followers. People are having problems translating things like fans and all this kind of stuff on Facebook, Twitter, and even visitors to their blogs. Translating those eyeballs into actual dollars. People who are willing to make the leap to donate $1 or $10 or $20 or more. Do you have any insight as to why it's so hard to get people to put their money where their mouths are?
Well, I mean, without wanting to sound brutal and negative, it's often because the proposition just isn't exciting enough. Hollywood is the king of sexing up the proposition. Put Tom Cruise in it, suddenly everybody's interested. And that's, exactly why he is paid what he is paid. So I would go back to your concept, to your artwork, to everything that surrounds your film and say, how can I make this sexy and attractive and a must-have proposition without compromising the essence and the heart of what it is that you're trying to do? Often that can just be the involvement of, say, an actor or a key crew member or the goal and the aspiration of the film. I mean, everyone and their brother is making a film now. I mean, with the advent of 5D Mark II and prior technologies, anybody can make a film. And I think a lot of filmmakers think, well, I'm special because I'm making a film. Well, no, there's nothing special about it. So you have to find something very special about what you're doing, and that at least gets people interested. I mean, again, British filmmakers are terrible at this over here. Not all British filmmakers, obviously, but many British filmmakers, they do kind of feel like the world owes them an audience, and that nobody's owed an audience. You have to present something that is worthy of the audience, and if you do that, then generally they'll sit up and take note. How you translate that into hard dollars, I really wish I had a great answer for you. I think a year ago, 18 months ago, probably you wouldn't have had as much difficulty. But ironically, with at the moment a technology exists like Indiegogo, it's accessible, it's easy to do, and therefore everyone and their brother's doing it. I mean, just as an example.
Right.
The trend that I saw when I was doing the festival circuit is anybody who was on Without a Box, you pretty much had almost 5 times less of a chance of getting into that festival, simply because it's so easy to enter. It's so easy to make a film and put it into Without a Box, and the numbers are just astronomical. Whereas if you went to a festival that wasn't with Without a Box, then there were less people submitting. So you were off the radar. You had a much greater chance of getting into that festival. So, is Indiegogo perhaps the right way to go?
Right.
That would be my first thought. It's great. It's a technology. It's a machine that works for you. But how well is it working for you? Is there could you literally knock on people's doors and go down the street and say, I'm raising funds for my movie. Will you give me $1? You might get arrested, but you could try it.
Now,
just to finish this point, when crowdfunding first began, that was in essence what those first filmmakers were doing. They were being unreasonable, they were being polite and professional with it, but they were being unreasonable and asking the unthinkable. Just give me a bit of money for an idea, for nothing at all tangible right now, with the promise that it will become tangible. That has become industrialized into a concept, so people get the concept now, but the problem is, it's not that interesting anymore.
Right.
So sure, use it, plunder it as much as you possibly can, but then start thinking about new things that other people aren't doing, and it's often about comfort zone. If you're doing it and you're going, no, this is really uncomfortable, you're probably doing the right thing, because it means the other filmmakers probably won't be doing it. So
it seems to me 2 things. First of all, it seems to me that there can only be one first to do anything. There's you have got people like Lance Weiler, who was one of the first people to have their movies digitally projected via satellite. You have someone like yourself who's making bold statements that you're going to try to win the Oscar with your short film and going on that route in that campaign. And whether you succeed or not, you were one of the first persons to kind of just be public about that and blog about it and do all that. Aaron Crumley, his first thing with Four-Eyed Monsters, and I mean there are a lot of people out there who were the first to do something, and now these are the people who are going back to the independent film community and saying well, it worked for me, so try this. The problem is that, do you feel that there really can only be, in the end there can be only one first, and after that it becomes significantly more difficult?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. But the lesson in it is the innovation of thought that actually created that first idea. Like I said, I quoted Danny Lacey earlier. Who else, apart from an absolutely crackers filmmaker, would decide to do a 24-hour live broadcast to raise money for their film? He's making a bold statement about who he is and what he's trying to do, and that is very charismatic. I think the one thing filmmakers really have in spades is a kind of charisma that attracts people to just take a punt on it. And if what you're doing displays that chutzpah, that charisma, then people do get emotionally involved, because more than wanting to see a great little movie, they kind of want to see you succeed. If all you're trying to do is just make a little movie that's kind of a little bit interesting over here, round the corner down the road, then that's one thing. If you're really risking everything, if you're confronting stuff, this is one of the reasons why documentary works very well in the crowd funding model, is that the filmmakers themselves, you can see are very motivated and very energized by what they're doing, and that's actually really sexy to be around. That's what most people seek out. So if your work challenges you as an individual, and people can see that you're really out there doing it, then they're more inclined to lean forward and go, this is kind of interesting, because part of me wants to be you, wants to be that courageous, risk-taking, all guns blazing kind of creative person. So I would, amp it up, always amp it up.
Now another thing I want to talk about real quick in regards to filmmaking in general, and then we're going to go over and plug the hell out of your seminar and your workshops, which you can go over to livingspirit.com and check out what you have going on there, and chrisjonesblog.com and all that. Here's the thing, and Jerry, forgive me for kind of calling you out a little bit, but I want Chris to talk about it. Jerry, much to his credit, made Stuck Like Chuck pretty much on his own. He had actors and actresses that basically, but that was really all he had for, he had cast and he was his own crew, to the point where his production company is called On My Own Productions. I've spoken with Jerry about his making Stuck Like Chuck 2, and it looks like he's starting. It's a much bigger production. He's going from a budget of like $2,500 to like 30 to 50 grand, and it seems. And Jerry's not the only one, but I'm using him as the example because we're talking about him. He seems to be, like a lot of filmmakers, hesitant to trust other people to get them involved in their projects. He's had a very hard time finding people that he finds to be trustworthy to act as producers, to help him with stuff like fundraising and investments and wrangling equipment, whether it be stuff for free or just working with other companies and stuff like that, and even to the point where he wants to, he's even hesitant to hire an experienced cinematographer because he has a difficulty trusting anyone but his vision behind the lens. Is there anything that you can do to kind of, and this, like I said, I'm using Jerry as the example, calling him out, I apologize, but is there anything that you can say to him that, and just to the filmmakers that are in the chat room here live listening, that would kind of assuage their fears and let them know a little bit like that film is a collaborative effort and that, you need to find people you can trust to work with, but they're out there and how to find them?
Right, well, that's a kind of big, complicated question. First of all, I would say is that you're absolutely right. We all have that fear that working with somebody else, they're going to kind of mess it up. And, with good reason at times, because if you are not paying money and you're using inexperience, they are effectively, many filmmakers are learning at your cost, which is, on the flip side, the cheapest film school you can actually go to. So I do empathise and sympathise. I think one of the key things to try and do is forge a relationship with a single individual. What I've seen repeatedly work in other filmmakers is when two filmmakers team up together and they kind of have that bonding experience that may take some time to actually create, and they're complementary, they kind of complement each other in their skill sets, and they support and they protect each other, then pretty much anything is possible rapidly. I look back at the films that I made with Genevieve, who I co-wrote the book with, and what we could achieve in one day, I could only achieve in like 2 weeks on my own. It gave you a strength and an ability to move very, very quickly. So if you can find an individual, if you're obviously if you're a writer-director, then you're looking kind of for a producer. There's a very well-known business model, the 80-20 principle, that you can go research that if you don't know about it, that really kind of examines why that model works so well. So there is that, but you're absolutely right to say, filmmaking is a collaborative experience, and you can't make a film, or it's very difficult to make a film in a vacuum on your own. You just kind of got to just go with it, really, and follow your gut. I mean, I've always known or felt that if my gut is telling me something, there is a reason for that, and listen to it. You want people who look at you clearly in the eye, who listen, who get what you're trying to do, and aren't obsessed by either changing your vision or making you wrong. You want to be working with collaborators and not necessarily just the biggest gun or the person with the most connections. You're captain of the ship, and you need to lead your ship through very icy waters. So you've got to find people who are prepared to challenge you, but in a good way and not in an egotistical way. But it is a tough question, and you're working with people who themselves are struggling and broke, and trying to find more experience, build up their resume, build up their skill set. But I think probably the most important thing to say is this isn't it. This next movie that you're making is not the end. It's not the only movie you will ever make. Just get on with it and do it, because there will be another movie that will follow. And when you're on that next movie, you look back at this movie and go, why was I procrastinating or worrying? I just got to get on with it, because that experience is sitting in front of me in April 2010. There'll be a whole new one in April 2011 or 12 or 13. Just looking at a career of film.
Right. Well, let's go over a little bit about what your seminar and workshops are, and kind of what they cover. And where we can all buy tickets where can we get all this great information in one awesome little package?
Right. Well, obviously, the books are the takeaway version. Mm-hmm. I started running workshops in the UK because after our first edition of the Guerrilla Filmmaker's Handbook, new filmmakers would come and say, could I just ask you these questions? And I would always say yes, because you could see they'd raised a bit of money and they were about to just experience a train wreck because they were making some rookie errors. So I'd sit down with them for a few hours and we'd work the stuff through, and then that turned into me fixing everybody else's films and never actually making my own. So I thought I was going to get everyone in one room, and that was the genesis of the workshop experience that I've been doing now for maybe 12 years. That continues out of Ealing Studios in West London. We've got a bunch of things going on pretty much all the time. We're doing a really exciting one at the beginning of May with John Rice and Sherry Candler about distribution in 2010. Almost certainly the most important and exciting workshop that I've done in many, many years. And you can get information about that on my blog at chrisjonesblog.com and at distribution2010.eventbrite.com. Mm-hmm. But that's a physical geographic course in London. If you can't get to London for a workshop, and I appreciate, we are in a global world, we have new workshops which are appearing online as well. And that was pioneered with the very first one, which is my gone fishing workshop, which frankly I had no clue whether people would get it, enjoy it, would find it useful or not. Just out of the whole gone fishing experience, when I said, I'm going to try and win an Oscar, and then we got Oscar shortlisted, all the adventure and everything that I learned making that film, I turned into a one-day workshop, which became a two-day workshop, which we subsequently filmed, and then cut that up and turned that into a two-day online filmmaking experience that very powerfully takes the participant on the journey of developing an idea into a first draft script, second draft script, third draft script, into a storyboard, into the shoot, all the way through the shoot, all the way through the various edits, sound, then through distribution, through creating all the marketing materials, how to get a Dolby Digital license. The whole gamut is there, literally, in a complete linear form. And I think the thing that people get out of that experience more than anything is that they actually feel like they made Gone Fishing.
I will say, having watched several of those videos up there and following along with what you were doing, it is quite possibly the most complete. It's the most complete filmmaking workshop I've ever seen. There are a lot of filmmaking seminars and workshops and stuff like that are out there. Obviously, there's a slew of books you can buy on the subject. Your book and series of books and your workshops are absolutely the most personable and relevant things that I've read and seen in quite a long time.
That's very kind of you to say so. Thank you. I mean, I've always worked very, very hard to communicate filmmaking in in a particular way, because I'm dyslexic myself, and when I was at film school, I remember there were a couple of books on the shelf. I would pick them up and immediately go, oh, no, can't even look at that. So I've always designed everything with nice big pretty pictures in it, and with bullet points and lists, so that it's easy to consume. And I've always tried to ask the questions in such a way as I'm asking them as a new filmmaker, but tempered with the experiences that I've had as a filmmaker over the last 20 years. And it's just something it kind of comes naturally to me. It's just the tone of who I am, I think that comes through in the books and the workshops. So yeah, just going back to the Gone Fishing workshop, it does go all the way through sales, distribution, and film festivals, and marketing, and you can sign up for that on gonefishingseminar.com. Again, you can click through it from the blog at chrisjonesblog.com, and that is a constantly evolving workshop. We do keep adding little bits every so often. You can even download the rushes for the film, which are all shown on 35mm, and cut your own version of the movie. So it's been a very rewarding experience putting that workshop together as well, because I've seen it empower filmmakers over here in the UK and across the world. In fact, a lot of people in Australia seem to have done it, which has been very, very rewarding.
We do have a couple of questions from the audience that I definitely want to throw out to you, because if I don't, they'll lynch me. The first one just says, please ask if you do any practical courses in the UK.
Right. I haven't so far. I may well do so. The problem I have about practical courses, there's two aspects to it. There's kind of learning a technology practical course, and then there's the whole making a film practical course. Those are very intensive workshops, and I think there are other people who are set up better to do it. But in truth, I think the best practical workshop you can go on is the one you do downstairs in your living room next Saturday when you pick the camera up, and it's very cheap to do it that way. Filmmaking is often kind of equated to some kind of rocket science or some dark art. It's actually really simple. Now, making a terrific movie is an entirely different thing, but just picking up a camera and making a documentary about your mum, washing the dishes in the sink, and doing an interview with her and getting the cutaways, and then editing that together into a coherent little 4-minute film, you can do that for no money, and what you will learn in one day will be hands down. Many workshops you would pay hundreds of dollars to do, and you can do it yourself, and you don't need all of that kind of stuff. Even though I run workshops and I have a kind of a secondary business that does that, I'm always advising people not to do workshops, but to actually get out there and go do it instead, because that's the real lesson. We filmmakers, we can learn a certain amount from reading a book or doing a course, but we're like babies. We've actually got to stick our own hands in the fire and chew that toy in a particular way to know what it feels like. We just got to do it ourselves, and we just can't learn from others. So I say, sure, if you really want to do a practical workshop, go do it, but the best one is just self-organizing with you and your mates. Go do something, put it out there, learn, and then repeat, and before you know it, you'll know exactly what you're doing and be making something really ambitious.
I completely agree, and so does everyone in my chat room. Actually, that they all agree with your point on that as well. Let's see, I got another couple questions, or at least one. I'll try to give you one because I know we've already got you a little over the hour, but these guys are hungry. Let's see. Someone asked, at what point did you decide to do workshops? Was it just because of the demands on your time from other filmmakers, like you had mentioned?
Yeah, the honest truth is I really enjoy it. I do have a real. It's for the last 10 years of my career, I've had a real awful kind of quandary and decision in my life, which is, do I pursue being a filmmaker, or do I become a professional educator or teacher? Because I really, really love it. I get a huge amount from presenting to an audience, but I discovered I basically have to keep both alive and kicking, because unless I'm an active filmmaker doing stuff and challenging myself and the system and the status quo, I'm not really learning anything. And if I'm not learning anything, then how on earth am I going to teach the new generation of filmmakers or inspire them? Because those guys are out there doing it better than I am. Mm-hmm. And, you know, those guys are then going to be coming teaching me. So I have to do both. And, you know, good news for me is I love doing both. But I've got to say, I really do love the film education aspect of it. I just get frustrated when it becomes film school, because I had a very bad experience at film school, and I just think, you know, short blasts, short focused blasts of film education are fantastic, but anything institutionalized doesn't work for me. I'm sure it works for others, but it doesn't necessarily work for me. I just looked at Philip Bloom's 5D Mark II DVD workshop. It's fantastic, just absolutely terrific. And the thing's only like an hour and a bit long, and it really is everything you need to know about shooting on a 5D Mark II, aside from just picking up the damn camera and going out there and making a movie with it and cutting it together. So yeah, I love film training, and I'm just delighted that the online course, gonefishingseminar.com, has been so well received. I mean, if you read the feedback, it's kind of life-changing for some people, and to get that feedback from people is just, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah, so we have to make sure everyone goes on over to www.gonefishingseminar.com and definitely sign up for that, because it really is a very, very complete. It's your journey, and
yeah.
I mean, everything from script drafts all the way to marketing, distribution, festivals, everything, and it's what everyone in my audience is going through, and to see you go through it as well, or having gone through it and able to live to tell the tale, it's your cave drawing on the wall about the bear.
Yeah, absolutely.
And everyone should definitely pay attention to what you're saying. Everyone, if you're not able to stick online and watch these videos, the least you could do is go out and get the Guerrilla Filmmakers pocketbook. And again, it's handy if you live in New York, you ride the train. This fits perfect in a pocket for the train. You know, or any other city where you're making films, it fits very well in a bag or a pocket. Because it is a pocket book. Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you. I really just completely appreciate you coming on and sharing all your experiences with us. And it's such a pleasure to have you here, and if there's anything else that we can ever do for you on our end to help you get your stuff out there, please don't hesitate to let us know.
That's very kind, and I just, you know, I want to say to everybody who's got through to the end of this conversation, thank you, and you know, I'm always blown away when I have somebody or I'm with somebody who listens to me speak for any period of time, because it says a huge amount about who that person is and that person's commitment to their particular journey and dreams and ambitions, that they're prepared to listen to other people and to take from those other people what they need in order to make their films happen. So, you know, good luck with your movies, and I have nothing but wishes and success for you. And if anybody who is listening to this does actually get an Oscar nomination one day, or wins an Oscar, I would thank me in your speech, please. I'm waiting for it. I can't wait.
Now that makes me feel like I'm gonna have to start lobbying for all these filmmakers to get their Oscars, just so we could all thank Chris Jones. No, that's awesome.
Go for the Oscar anyway, and you know, if you get there, and if you can remember, then fine. I am, of course, being ridiculous. It's just about, raising the dream level. Whatever it is you're choosing to do, don't be happy with mediocrity or with, wherever you're aiming, just for 1 minute, look upwards and aim like 1,000 times higher, and I guarantee you will get much better results immediately.
So definitely words of wisdom from Mr. Chris Jones. You can go to www.livingspirit.com and check out everything that's going on with him. You can definitely check out his blog over at it's www.chrisjonesblog.com.
That's correct.
Yep, and follow.
This gone fishing seminar to them. I'll just put them in the chat room right now.
Excellent. Yeah, we've already listed them there too, but we want to make sure that everyone gets in there because it's just. It's so much information, and you can, if you really enjoy talking to Chris, I'm sure he'd like to talk to you guys some more over on Twitter. He's twitter.com/livingspiritpics, and that's P-I-X. And thank you so much, and we really appreciate you coming on, and we're sorry to keep you up.
Hey, listen, I'm a filmmaker, we live all the way through the nights, we sleep under rocks, it's...
and sometimes in jail.
It's a pleasure. Yeah.
So that's it for another edition of Film Snobbery Live. I want to thank Jerry for going out there and putting his story out there a little bit too. I want to thank Chris for sharing everything that he's gone through with us here on the show, and I want to thank everyone for showing up here on the show as well. Hopefully we got some new people, but I want to thank all the regulars who show up every week like clockwork. I greatly appreciate it. Go out there at a bookstore near you, pick up the Guerrilla Filmmaker's Pocketbook. I will tell you what, if you don't learn something from this book, I will buy it for you. That's how confident I am.
Can I just add, I completely forgot to mention, out of the Guerrilla Filmmaker's Pocketbook, we committed to a series of web TV shows just like this, which is basically the Guerrilla Filmmaker's Handbook live TV, and that goes out Thursdays at 7:30 UK time. And we've had our first 2 episodes, and our next one is this Thursday, and it's quite a riot, just like this experience has been. So if you want more filmmaking tips, tricks, and experience, then again just go over to chrisjonesblog.com on Thursday 7:30 UK time and join the party.
Yeah, no, please, definitely. We all have to. It's a community, and we all have to support each other. And thankfully, you're not on my time zone, during my show. So I will support you all day long because you don't cut into my time. No, but no, definitely. If you guys have taken even an ounce of any information out of tonight's show, just imagine when it's all about what Chris is doing and his people as well. And stay tuned. I want everyone to stay tuned. Next week, we've got another great show for you. We've got Emmy Award winner documentary filmmaker Mark Mori on. I know his last name is Mori. I believe his first name is Mark. Oh, geez. It's late, guys. Sorry. And as well as kick-ass editor Eddie Hamilton. You can actually read a little bit of Eddie Hamilton here in the Guerrilla Filmmaker's Pocketbook. As well, because he's got a little subject in here on editing, doesn't he, Mr. Chris?
He does indeed, and in fact, that entire section, if you want a taste of the Guerrilla Filmmaker's Pocketbook, you can actually read his entire interview on my blog, chrisjonesblog.com. That was a post from like 2 or 3 days ago. Or go to Eddie's website at, I think it's eddiehamilton.co.uk.
That is correct.
Yeah, but Eddie's one of the most passionate filmmakers I've ever met. Everybody... we use the word genius a lot in this film business, and I've met a lot of very talented people, but Eddie is actually the only genius I've ever met. He's like Buzz Lightyear. He is a force of nature, and we can all learn vast amounts from his knowledge and experience, and I'll be tuning in to listen to that one live.
Oh, thank you, and hey, guys, remember, he edited Kick-Ass, which I just saw today. So I guess with that being said, I've only got one more thing to add for the rest of the night before we take off, and that's camera 2. So thank you very much, everyone. Hopefully you guys all got something out of the show tonight, and I greatly appreciate everyone showing up and hanging with us. Really? Oh, that was a joke. Credits. Gotcha. So if you played the opening credits again, not the closing credits. That's okay, sir. Doesn't matter. No, it's the ones that are marked clearly closing credits.
I marked all like a bat cave over there, and you still can't. Hey, Chris, you still with us?
Can you fit in my mind?
Hopefully you had a little bit of fun. I know it's late for you, and
It's terrific.
and we were